And I want to let him know a little bit about you. So he's Iranian born. He's a visionary entrepreneur. He wears multiple hats and the founder and CEO of a successful business empire. His entrepreneurial journey began at a very young age when he started his first business at the age of 13. Over the years, he's ventured into more than a dozen businesses before finding big success.
Yeah, wow, that was the fulcrum of my life, really. The migration from Iran to Germany and then from there to the United States. Those were the building blocks because as you can appreciate when you're that young, 5, 10 years old, you obviously want to fit in, right, with your peer group. And there was pain there. There was definitely a language barrier, a cultural barrier, an attire barrier. There was many different differences from where I had come from. We're looking for happiness. All individuals, whatever we do in life, we're looking for happiness. Where do we look for happiness typically? We look for it in objects. We look for it in food, sex, objects, relationships.
What has this higher consciousness informed you of that you may not have been informed of had you not taken the path of a spiritual being?
Oh, what a beautiful question. All of the desires of the ego that we all deal with, whether it's gluttony, whether it's envy, whether it's taking shortcuts, whether it's fibbing a little bit, right? Rationalizing these things that are of the flesh, if you will, were then being pointed out. There was clarity. I had the ability now to discern, discriminate against what is truly the right path and what was going to be a pitfall.
What advice would you have given to your younger self?
The advice I would give anybody is do more of an introspective journey. Step back, and then it's like the bow and arrow, right? Draw the arrow back more and more and more and more and more and more.
Well, for all my listeners, welcome back to this subset podcast, which is called Beyond the Bottom Line, but it is connected with inside personal growth. And we have Kash Fadaie. Did I get it right?
Got it right. For that, you like Hawaii.
All right. Because we were just talking about that. The way to do it is joining us from Texas. And he reached out to me about being on the show. And I was saying, hey, your story is really a beyond the bottom line story because this is really more about your success as an entrepreneur, but also your spiritual growth. For all my spiritual seekers, I want you to listen carefully about Kosh and his story. And Kosh, if you don't mind, thank you for being on the podcast. We are going to be talking about beyond the bottom line because you're somebody who has definitely gone beyond the bottom line. And I want to let him know a little bit about you. So he's Iranian born. He's a visionary entrepreneur. He wears multiple hats and the founder and CEO of a successful business empire. His entrepreneurial journey began at a very young age when he started his first business at the age of 13. Over the years, he's ventured into more than a dozen businesses before finding big success in the insurance industry. And he and I have had a discussion. Um, I was in the insurance business as well, and I still have my insurance licenses. And it's always a business of service, helping and serving others. And I can see how Kosh got into it. because really your love has to be of people and helping people. And Kosh, I want to compliment you for that because anybody that succeeds in this business and doesn't fail, they really saw their purpose being much higher than just making money. Because you can make a lot of money in the insurance business, but truly, it's a calling beyond that. Um, in 2006, he established a scratch agency and he assembled a team of agents through his strategic business and investment in robust technology. He grew the agency to thriving a $10 million business with a vast clientele that spans across California, Texas, and obviously he's got his licenses in many states. Um, he's a visionary thinker. He delves deep into ideas, always striving for growth and evolution, or he wouldn't have reached out to be on this podcast either. Um, he likes to achieve excellence and exemplifies the essence of a forward thinking leader, who inspires those around him to reach out to new heights of success. And you can reach him at FADAIE insurance.com. Pretty simple, and I'll repeat it again. FADAIE Insurance Services is the name of the company, but the website is Fadaie Insurance Services. So, Kosh, you started this journey from Iran to the US at the age of 11. Pretty remarkable. Um, how is that really when you come from Iran and you come to a new country, got to learn a new language, you're pretty young. How'd your background really shape you being this entrepreneur and the approach to business? What would you tell our listeners?
Yeah, wow, that was the fulcrum of my life, really. The migration from Iran to Germany and then from there to the United States. Those were the building blocks because as you can appreciate when you're that young, 5, 10 years old, you obviously want to fit in, right, with your peer group. And there was pain there. There was definitely a language barrier, a cultural barrier, an attire barrier. There was many different differences from where I had come from, and that sort of pain or struggle, I had to aspire through, and I had to find a way as a kid to do that. Now, my parents don't speak, German at the time, and then English later on. So, I would say that those certain various struggles and my ability to still acclimate somehow, um, was what I recruited from then later on. It became sort of my, masters in business, so to speak. So yeah,
Did
those
you
are very.
find did you find, Kosh, that adversity or discomfort was something that pushed you to actually want to excel? And if so, how did you use this adversity and discomfort to grow into the person that you are today?
Yeah, and so I didn't know that at the time. I was a kid. Now, in hindsight, we can look back and study our background and say, "Yeah, my God, that in retrospect was those were critical foundational pieces." But somehow, as a kid, and it could go both ways, obviously. In my case, it fueled me to find a way to fit in, to succeed in my inner circles, and it allowed me to sort of triumph over those things. And so I always had to find a way to be the chameleon, to find a way. I had a weird name. I had, like I said, I had various things that were not aligned with the particular setting of that time. So me overcoming those, it in retrospect, Greg, it seems that it was some sort of a divine thing that was guiding me. That's the only way I can put it. There's something divine, maybe a calling that would then just sort of assist me in getting through those things. Yeah, so that's kind of a remarkable story.
Well, it's remarkable too to think about what it takes to, and I'm kind of fast forwarding here, but you've built this insurance agency and it's around $11 million agency. And there aren't a lot of people that get it that far. Now, I need to let our listeners know, full disclosure, he's doing auto insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance, medical insurance. Those are all part of it. But he has offices in Irvine, California. He's got offices in Texas. He's got people working in both locations. And so, what got you, and at what age did you really decide to pursue this? And who was your biggest influencer? Who actually influenced you to want to, like, I mean, there is probably not a tougher business than selling life insurance. And I think I told you I was MDRT, court of the table, did it for 20 some odd 25 years where I was in court and MDRT. And it takes a lot to make it there.
It sure does. It's a tedious business, Greg, and you're absolutely correct. I guess I would have to step back a little bit and say, look, when I was about, you know, 8, 9 years old, I was in Germany and I was introduced by these traveling, Jehovah's Witnesses. I was introduced into the the Bible. They would come over and my parents, they didn't know English and these were warm people that wanted to build relationships. So we sort of let them into our lives and we created a friendship. And I was intrigued about various folks in that Bible that had a supernatural connection. And that's what sort of wooed me in into how can I be one of these individuals who has this like secret connection, this sort of superpower that would then lead them to triumph. And that was my first inspiration. The second inspiration was that, well, I was Persian and I come from a rich sort of history. And I noticed in my reading, and again, I'm a kid, 9, 10. I'm reading that these Persian fellas are in the Old Testament. I'm wondering, why are they in there? Why are Cyrus, Darius, in fact, my name Chashayar is the king Azuris, Ashurvarosh in Hebrew. Why are they in there and why are they succeeding? So that opened up another rabbit hole, Greg, and that rabbit hole led me into the self-help section of Barnes and Noble.
Ah,
Okay. And I
right.
sat there and that was when I started to really read and read and read. And
Who
oh,
were you reading? What were you reading? Do you remember?
yeah, absolutely.
Like Think and Grow Rich, or what were some of
Napoleon
the.
Hill was a staple of my success. But the most important book I read was the autobiography of a yogi,
Okay, Paramahansa
uh,
Yogananda.
Yogananda.
And I'm a devotee of SRF, as we discussed before.
Right.
And I think that's a big one because that's an Eastern philosophy. So, obviously that influenced. Now, you look at many people
Yeah.
from a standpoint of detachment. Let's just talk about attachment, detachment. And
Hmm.
philosophically, here, we're going to look at some things because you went into transcendental meditation as well, which, in Iowa, there's a big place for those people that don't really realize there's a university. It's the Maharishi University. Now, I never asked you this. Did you ever end up there?
Absolutely. I went there and I got my advanced TM Cities program certification.
Okay.
I meditated with hundreds, if not thousands, of folks in the Golden Domes. Yeah. They're
Fantastic. So, what did you take away from your meditation practices that you've applied to life and business today that you believe has helped you? I'm not even going to just say be a success, but be the person that you are, which is a compassionate, kind, loving individual. And I think when you have those traits,
Mm.
you also can have success. Now, success doesn't always look like money sometimes. it comes out in many different ways. And I want us to compare and contrast that because while you are successful monetarily, I think you're successful in so many other ways.
Absolutely, great question. And this is really, I guess I would say that this is the ethos of my life, is that what I discovered by virtue of these great swamis and yogis and various masters is to go within, because everything that I read, Greg, said go within, go within. I didn't know what does that mean. And so I learned that through the technology or technique of meditation, I could go within. So after practicing meditation, and to your question now, I want to give you an answer. To put it simply, before meditation and discovering that ocean of bliss within, which I discovered eventually through meditation, there was attachment to exterior items, material items, because we're looking for happiness. All individuals, whatever we do in life, we're looking for happiness. Where do we look for happiness typically? We look for it in objects. We look for it in food, sex, objects, relationships. But the problem with that is that if our happiness is attached to those various objects, we know that it's temporal. We
Right.
know that it's fleeting. So, what happened, Greg? And here it is. Once I discovered, and this might sound trite to many, but in reality, once I discovered that there is pure bliss, sat, chit, ananda, right? Truth, chit, consciousness, ananda, bliss, right here inside me. And I can consistently access that, Greg. That's when something fell off. Happiness now was no longer attached to the outside. It was here and the
Inside.
old inside.
Yeah.
And when that happened, detachment began to fade away, because I would always then go to the secret place of the Most High.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
On all those years at Maharashi University, did you have any Satori experiences? And if you did, can you explain to the listeners what that was like for you? Because I know not everybody reaches or attains that one with everything experience. But obviously, the meditation, one of them is so that you will have that uh, I am just one with everything.
Yes, sir. And it's absolutely true. I must say that the satori or the samadhi or the moksha experience, in my humble experience, comes with gradations. It comes, or you can call it the kundalini awakening. It first comes and it sort of turns on the lights a little bit, okay? And then it begins to woo you in. You become smitten by it. And now the pursuit becomes stronger and there's more momentum. So now comes a purification process where, oh my goodness, light has been shown, and now various distortions within all of us have to be extinguished. Yeah. And so there's phases to the Satori experience. But once I had that first, gradation of that Satori experience, it drove me, Greg, to then pursue it and create more purification, more integration, until there were other gradations of it. Now, what is the experience? I want to say to everybody listening, this may sound cliche, but unless you actually taste the orange, you'll never know the taste of it. You can describe it all you want, right? We can read about it in literature from many traditions, but the actual taste of it requires patience, a real desire to be one, and consistency. And the experience is electrifying. In other words, one can sit quietly, I can sit quietly And within a few seconds, I can change my brain waves. I can make my voice. And this is not me trying to do it. This is just a byproduct of that samadhi experience where the breath becomes so faint, where you're not even really breathing. There's very slight amount of breath. And there's this amazing light in my experience, and this extreme joy, supreme joy, I would call it. And pretend that was the case. If that were to be able, that somebody could accomplish that, wouldn't that be the overarching thing in your life?
Well, it certainly is obviously the thing that you would think people would want to pursue versus pursuing in this case objects, which we talked about earlier. Now, recently on this show was Ken Wilber on a book called Finding Radical Wholeness. And he talked about, I don't know if you know him or not. Do you know who he is, the author?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, you know, his lines, his levels, his psychology, all the things that he's put into it. And I want to discuss this for a second with you because you certainly, in my estimation, are somebody who's found radical wholeness. And you've found that through your consistent transcendental meditation practices and continued on. You also said you read the autobiography of a yogi, which really influenced you. So, from the standpoint of the physical manifestation of the spirit within you through the changes in your chakra or your being, the various crown chakra all the way through, what does it feel like to you to express who you are to your employees in your company when you are in the most positive state that you can be? Because I think, look, you have many people that work with you as partners, and they want to see Kosh in the best light all the time. How do you actually trigger to know, oh, ooh, I'm off balance here? I need, because this is where business people can learn. I'm off balance. I need to readjust. Um, because look, we've got egos too. I don't care how Satori you're being, you can be pushed off balance very easily.
Mm, absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful. Glad you bring that up because what I discovered, Greg, was that my first love was spiritual ascension, was this path that I was on as an early, you know, youngster. But then I had these ambitions to also be a householder, right? I wasn't going to be a recluse. I was a householder. I wanted to be a married man. I wanted to have children, but yet I wanted to reach enlightenment and follow this path. So there was a sort of a quasi dilemma. And what I learned from Yogananda and Maharishi was that one does not have to forego their spiritual and their professional. As a matter of fact, those can be merged. And so to answer your question, I realized that in order for me to then graduate into higher echelons of my spiritual quest was that in the inward stroke of my program, which is the meditation program, early in the morning, midday, afternoon, that was the inward stroke. That's where I go to. The metaphor is I go to this vast bank, right? And I withdraw money, right? But so what? Now you have bliss. So what? What's the next step? Well, the next step was to then integrate that into the earth plane. And that's what I call the outward stroke. In this metaphor, same metaphor, that's when we go to the bazaar, right? We go to the marketplace and then we go and spend this money, right? This metaphorical money. So I learned that in order for me to reach higher states of consciousness,
So, Kosh, once
it,
you're on the right track, and I love
okay,
what you're saying, and and I hate for interrupting, but there's a term here that has been used in Eastern philosophy, and it's people get caught in the Maya. Okay. And that's this outward attachment to things versus the detachment from those things.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who has embraced entrepreneurism and gone beyond the bottom line, how do you run your life knowing that the Maya is always pulling and you still have a deeper, more honest
You
respect toward being this person who's spiritual in nature?
you use the Maya. You don't try to exert effort to remove it. The Maya, then, it turns out, is the catalyst that one needs to then integrate. In other words, when setbacks, issues, Maya, Leela presents itself, we now look at it from a different perspective, Greg. And that perspective is, oh, this is my catalyst to now integrate the things that I delved into during my practice. Now I get to make informed decisions from the level of pure consciousness. Huh? And now overcoming this various test, right?
Mhm.
I then get to integrate and bring that to the earth level. Now I'm starting to embody the qualities that I delve into. This is what happened to me. And this was sort of the divine sort of wisdom that I couldn't have done this on my own through my ego personality self, but I had access to the CEO of the universe, so to speak. And I
Mhm.
was being informed that, buddy, son, this is not your foe. This is your opportunity in disguise. Now you take the right thoughts, words, and deeds, and you overcome it. And now your trajectory is on the right path. And so I began to change my perspective about those things. And I started to play this little game with Maya. Huh? And this is sort of the path is that you don't run from it. You run through it because
What
there's
has the
something there.
what has this higher consciousness informed you of that you may not have been informed of had you not taken the path of a spiritual being?
Oh, what a beautiful question. All of the desires of the ego that we all deal with, whether it's gluttony, whether it's envy, whether it's taking shortcuts, whether it's uh, fibbing a little bit, right? Rationalizing these things that are of the flesh, if you will, were then being pointed out. There was clarity. I had the ability now to discern, discriminate against what is truly the right path and what was going to be a pitfall in various nuances of my day to day, right? Could I forego the ego's desire to gain something for itself, selfish reasons? Could
Mhm.
I see that in the threshold of decision making? Was there a corridor there that I could walk through that would be the right path? This discrimination came to me because consciousness started to rise. I was able to see things that I couldn't see before. And so I would overcome the things of the ego self and choose in the database of choosing. If I had a drop down, I could now see other choices. Yeah. And these choices were
I like
aligned,
it.
they were aligned with natural law, which
Well,
is,
you're a natural teacher. I can see that. And my listeners are really learning here. And I think that, consciousness and evolution of consciousness and learning from the universe, call it God, call it whatever you want to, because we reach a lot of different people through this show, right? So I'm not here to alienate anybody, whether you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Catholicism, it doesn't matter. But spirituality is a very, very important element, and then understanding what it can actually help you with is important. And that brings me to this. We're living in a world today, which, granted, from my levels of reincarnation, I can't remember my previous lives. But I do realize one thing in this particular life at the age of 70. I lived through a lot, but I have seen a lot of, let's just put it this way, uncertainty and doubt right now. We have leaders in this country, and I don't want to be political. What I want to do is I want to look at the real hard facts of spirituality as it relates to consciousness, as how we relate in business, how we treat one another, how we make this world a better place. Let's just leave it at that. What would you tell somebody right now where it's like looking at like, hey, look, Kosh had to take some pretty big risks to get to where he is. How do you look at risk? What would you tell somebody today? And how would you make them feel more comfortable with their uncertainty about life in general, given the current environment in which we're living?
Well, there's two wolves. You know this analogy probably. You have the bad wolf and the good wolf, right? And what you feed those wolves makes the biggest difference in your reality in this third dimension. So if we're looking for certainty, we have to decipher, what are we subjecting our mind to? What are we subjecting what are we putting in our bodies? What are we watching? What are we listening? Surely, if we're associating or focused on things that have within them fragmentation, distortion, rhetoric, fear, right? It's obvious that we will then swim in that area. We're feeding that other wolf. That's going to be the bigger wolf in our life. But we sort of have to come to a place and say, hey, am I truly done with uncertainty and fear, false evidence appearing to be real? Am I going to begin scrutinizing this? Then what we have to really do in that decision, Greg, is to sort of repent, like walk away and walk towards what is positive in in my life. What can I subject my mind, body, and soul to that is positive, that is truth, that is life supportive? And we begin to feed. So it's a choice we have to make. We have free will. And it really matters on who we're hanging out with. Who you associate with is who you become. And it's as simple as that. It's a matter of coming to a place, deciding that I want truth. I desire to be one with the divine. And from that place, Yogananda comes up. His devotion to God was paramount. And he talks about this. We need to come to a place where we really, really, really want the truth. And
Right.
if we do, i- it'll come. The pathway will be
I
opened up to
I
us.
love your wolf story and your analogy. You really I love your whole perspective on that. And I was recently on with Dr. Sikamar Rao, and I don't know if I told you this story or not, but you've probably heard it, but I'll go to the punchline of it without telling the whole story. And it's when I asked you that question about fear and risk, it brought me to this story where the guy borrows money to buy a horse, and then the horse runs away, and all the village people say, "Hey, you owe us for the horse." And then the horse comes back with 5 other horses. He fixes his corral and puts them in there. And he said, good things, bad things, who knows? Now, I think in the world that we live in today, you either put good things, you say, oh, it was good. Oh, no, it was bad. It was really bad. Or who knows if the adversity which you had in your life, whatever it may have been, was actually a gift, right? And I loved this story because you, who've been through so much adversity in your life, have been gifted. You've actually looked at it from what's been feeding the wolf, right? The positive side. And there are times when, hey, we can be positive and other times we can't. This industry you're in, and I'm going to take a shift here right now, is ever evolving. The insurance industry today, with the losses in the state of California and carriers moving out and saying we're not going to insure anymore, and the floods in Florida, and the whole complexion of the industry has changed. And primarily because of technology and predictive analytics. And I'm sure you're finding it harder to find carriers to want to take certain risks on. I'll just take an example. My own little house here, they said, hey, too much risk. You go to an non admitted carrier that says, oh, it's going to be twice the price, right? And I have absolutely very little, if any, risk around me, right? But that's the way they perceive it. What is happening in the industry? How do you see digital transformation shaping the future of insurance business and insurance agencies?
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing you raised there, Greg. This is an opportunity for many of my peers. It could go two ways. Um, on one hand, we have a lot of agency owners and agencies and other constituents who are resistant to change, as most humans are. On the other hand, we can take the the influx of modernity, and we can take the tech savviness today, and we could take that and leverage that into a benevolent way, right? One of the things that I want to bring to the insurance corporate space is a more heart-centered approach to when it comes to insurance. What do I mean by that? What if we could teach and educate consumers, policyholders, on how to have more insurable interest? Now, insurable interest is a term which we use in underwriting, which means that person truly cares about their assets, so they intend to keep it safe. What I endeavor to do, Greg, is to say, can we bring holistic approaches to our consumers? We know that if somebody is better rested, if they're eating a more balanced diet, for example, we know that if they exercise, we know that in peer, reviewed publications, we know that these things cause a person to be more creative, more rested, more dynamic.
And
What
more
if
healthy.
more healthy? No, and health is wealth. And if we're looking to
Yeah, and
protect your
some
wealth,
companies, Kosh, have been pretty progressive. For instance, John Hancock, they've got a policy where if you do certain things and take your tests and all your bloods are in good order, you're virtually going to get a better premium for a life insurance policy. Now we're talking life. But
yeah.
my point is like, we've got so much going on in your industry, and I love the way you approach this. That let the consumer take an interest in it. Um, and that would be in their bodies and in their possessions, both, right? We're talking about both. One of the things that I've seen that I think has been a positive and has had some negative is virtual agents and automation. They're becoming more and more commonplace. Like, hey, where do I get some damn customer service here? Like, actually talk to a human being.
Right.
How do you ultimately see your agencies growing? Because you want to grow this into, I think you said 1,000 locations in 5 years.
Yeah.
That's an ambitious goal. To do that, it's certainly going to have to include massive amounts of technology to get there. And so my question for you is, what do you foresee and how do you think this is going to happen? And where do you believe AI is going to play a role in all of this for your agencies?
Oh man, that's super. I love it. So I'm one of the agencies. I love this question. I'm one of the agencies, Greg, where I I'm doing very success. I'm succeeding with the virtual agent model, and here's the reason. See, the VA model, which to your audience, these are folks that are hired from overseas. And the question is, how do we manage that? How do American consumers get the right, vernacular? How do they get the customer service they want? And that takes me back to the spiritual element, Greg, is that if leadership has the ability to tap in within and bring authenticity to the table, and then have that authenticity, that genuineness, that consciousness expand and exude into the managers and the various CSRs, customer service reps, and agents, then what you do is you create a team culture that is driven by excellence, by learning from your mistakes, by failing forward, as it were, by being more efficient. Yes, we use, CRMs, and we use AI. And by the way, AI and ChatGPT, they're not against us. They
Right.
help us.
I
When we
agree.
when you leverage AI properly, it causes you to collapse time. And when you collapse time, you can be more efficient. So the real technology is this apparatus right here that everybody's sort of foregoing, is that if we can sort of dial in this technology, this human physiology from the top down, and we can bring heart centeredness and dynamism into the sort of ecosystem, then that will proliferate in every keystroke, every phone call, every pipeline card that we create, and the consumer experience then should give you the signal that, oh, my reviews are good, my clients are happy. That is my barometer. That's my key performance indicator. I always look at, how is my service? Is Greg, is Jill happy with our communication? That's what I look at. That's what I train my managers on. That's my KPI. And so I look at these barometers and I look at, hey, are we actually happy doing this? How is the tone of my customer service reps? How are they smiling when they're talking over the phone? I actually check those little nitty-gritty details, right? Because those are the culmination of what an American consumer then receives. So these are the creative ways where I'm looking at this as a huge opportunity to leverage this and bring more value to the marketplace.
Well, everything that you've talked about, especially the compassion, love, and understanding, which we want to have these customer service representatives emote to our customer. And I can see the passion you have to change this industry, because this industry has been steeped in pretty old-fashioned kind
Yep.
of ways of doing. You are a breath of fresh air, my friend, to an industry which kind of stalled out somewhere in that arena. I think more people like you will get them to uh, look at it in a new light. And that brings me to this, like, look, I see your purpose in life and in your professional. And it is about a purpose that I can see you've got. You want to transform yourself, your people, and the people who buy from you,
Mhm.
right? Who
Mhm.
actually trust you. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs who are looking to align their work with a deeper mission like what you've got? And what would your younger self have said to you starting out that you wish you maybe either would have given it some advice and said, okay, this is what I want to do? So, two pronged question. What is this purpose driven, your mission, and what advice would you have given to your younger self?
Oh man, I love it. That's so beautiful. Well, you're listening to this podcast. That's part of it, right? Who you associate with is who you become. What are you listening to, right? Know thyself. I would say. I would say that the answers are not outside of you. They're not necessarily in a magazine somewhere. It's not necessarily the next sort of you know CRM that you buy. It's more to do with your morning routine. It's more to do with your afternoon routine. It's more to do with investing in yourself, meaning what type of things am I putting in my body? Who are my mentors? What am I listening to when I'm going from here and there? What am I filling my life with? These are the leverage points that can create what? Creativity, more creativity, more creativity. To give yourself permission to be different, to be set apart, requires this inner self confidence. So, the advice I would give anybody is do more of an introspective journey. Step back, and then it's like the bow and arrow, right? Draw the arrow back more and more and more and more and more and more, and then let go, versus just doing the ordinary things that everybody other people do, right? I'm asking here for us to be extraordinary. Now, extraordinariness requires extraordinary sequences in our day. We have to bake into our daily routine certain protocols. At first, it may seem like, how is this going to move the needle? It's not just one thing, Greg. It's a cumulative thing. It may be about 10, 15 different things that you now start to do on a daily basis, where now over a little bit of time, it's moving the needle in your relationships, opportunities that are coming up, synchronicities that are happening now. Your energy levels are going up, and you're smiling more, you're happy more, and that energy becomes contagious, not just for your consumers, but also for the representatives in your business. They start talking about you. And now you get to a point where you want to do podcasts. You want to express and promulgate this inner joy that is bubbling forth, and it wants to go into the corporate arena, folks. The corporate arena needs this. So I guess in a nutshell, Greg, to finish this last subject here is to say that we can bring in the light and love of our spiritual life into the mundane, redundant, sort of darker corporate world. It is possible, and you can give yourself permission to do that. And so that is sort of the ethos of my of my
And
of my message. Yeah.
and I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think for all the insurance carriers, I don't care who they are that are listening to this podcast, we will have them, believe me. It's people like Kosh who are going to help you transform the culture, transform your customers, and do it with a much better experience because it's really about the experience they have.
Mm.
So, Kash Fadaie is basically the CEO of Fadaie Insurance Services. For all of my listeners, you can go to FADAIE insurance.com to learn more about his locations, his coverages, and so on. And Kosh, what I want to say in closing here is one, the transformative experience you went through because of your spiritual dedication and practices truly shows through for you as a human soul and the way you treat your employees and you treat your customers. And I think anybody who comes to your insurance agency, hopefully they're all going to have a wonderful experience like I've had doing this podcast with you. And I just want to thank you for being who you are, being authentic, being open, telling the story, which we got out in 45 minutes for people to listen to. And namaste to you, my friend, because
Namaste.
this has definitely been a very sweet interview for me. I did not know what to expect, and it was way beyond my expectation, which I loved.
Such an honor to be with you. I'm so excited about your success, your audience's success, and it's just what a gift it is to be alive. And there's a reason we don't remember our past lives. because this is sort of a game. We have to play and win, and we have each other, and it's okay. It's okay to be childlike. Maybe not childish sometimes, but it's okay to be childlike and be in the moment, and enjoy this gift, like Greg, like you said. So,
And I think you brought so many great things out in the last 45 minutes around embracing the bliss of life.
yes,
And I
yes,
think the most important thing around the bliss of life is really honestly, you started off this interview about attachment and detachment.
right,
And I think for us to be happier, happiness is an inside job. And
yes,
it's not the stuff we attach to
no,
that makes us happy. It's really what we do with inside of ourselves that makes us happy.
yes,
So, and for me, I have my own nonprofit. We give money to the homeless. It's it's what drives the show. So again, thank you for everything. Great podcast. For all my listeners, go to his website. We'll put a link there. We'll put a link to everything that you need to know. Kosh, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth. And thanks for sharing Beyond the Bottom Line, which is truly, you are somebody who is not just concerned about the bottom line. You want to go beyond the bottom line. Thanks so much.
thank you so much, Greg.